Okay, before I say anything else, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Because what I'm about to share with you is not your typical BTS content. This is not a chart update. This is not a comeback schedule breakdown. This is something that hit me in a completely different way. And I have been covering BTS long enough to know the difference between content that excites you and content that actually moves you. This one moved me. And I think once you hear what Jimin said, once you really sit with it, it's going to move you too. So let's get into it. Spotify just launched something called Decoding Errorang. It's an interactive experience inside the Spotify app where ARMY around the world can unlock video messages directly from all 7 BTS members: RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V and Jungkook. Each of them speaking candidly about the new album, about the creative process behind it, about what Errorang means to them on a deeply personal level. And this dropped today, March 13th, 2026, exactly 7 days before Errorang officially releases to the world on March 20th. Now, out of all 7 videos, Jimin's is the one that everyone is talking about. Jimin's is the one that's been screenshotted, rewatched, and quoted across every platform. Jimin's is the one that made people put down their phones and just sit in silence for a moment. And I want to talk about why, because the reason goes way deeper than just what he said. It goes into who Jimin is, where he came from, and what this album actually represents for him. But first, context. Because you cannot fully appreciate what Jimin said without understanding the weight behind it. Think about everything this man has been through. Think about the version of Jimin who first walked into big hit entertainment as a teenager from Busan. A city boy with a dialect that stood out, with dreams that were massive, with talent that was undeniable but still unproven. Think about the years of training, the pressure to be perfect, the constant scrutiny that came with being in one of the most watched groups on the planet. Think about the military service, the time away, the silence that followed a period of the loudest noise imaginable. And through all of that, through every single chapter, Jimin was always the one smiling the widest on stage. Always the one whose energy filled a room before he even said a word. Always the one who made every performance look effortless even when you knew, even when we all knew, that nothing about it was effortless at all. But here's the thing about Jimin that ARMY who have been paying close attention already understand. He is not someone who opens up easily. He is not someone who broadcasts his inner world casually. When Jimin is real with you, when he actually pulls back the curtain and shows you something true, it means something. It's not a calculated PR moment. It's not a scripted interview answer. It is a genuine choice to be seen. And those moments are rare. And they are precious. And the Spotify video is one of them. In the video, Jimin talks about Errorang in a way I have genuinely never heard him talk about any project before. He doesn't talk about the production details. He doesn't walk you through the concept or the visual direction. He talks about feelings. He talks about what it actually felt like to sit in a studio and create something after everything that BTS went through. He talks about the weight of returning, not just returning to music, but returning to himself. He talks about longing, and not longing in a simple, surface-level way. Not just, I miss performing, or I miss the fans. He talks about a specific kind of longing that I think will resonate with anyone who has ever worked incredibly hard towards something, achieved it, and then found a strange quiet waiting for them on the other side of that achievement. He talks about missing the fear, the early career fear, the uncertainty, the feeling of not knowing if any of this was going to work. Because when you're scared, everything still feels possible. When you're terrified, it means you haven't lost yet. And there's a strange kind of freedom in that, a freedom that you don't recognize as freedom until it's gone. Jimin recognized it, and he talked about it with an honesty that I think took courage to share publicly. He sat in front of that camera, and he said something that most people, most successful people, never admit. That success has its own weight. That arriving at the top does not automatically mean peace. That sometimes, in the middle of all the greatness, you find yourself reaching back for the version of yourself who was still climbing. Not because the top isn't worth it, but because that person, that scared, uncertain, hungry version of yourself, that person was fully alive in a way that is hard to replicate. I want you to sit with that for a second, because that is not idle talk. That is not something you read off a script. That is a human being telling you the truth about their experience. And in an industry that is built on carefully managed images and precisely crafted narratives, that kind of truth is genuinely extraordinary. But then, and this is the part that got me, Jimin talks about ARMY. And the way he does it is unlike anything I've heard before. He doesn't say, "Thank you for your support." He doesn't deliver the standard, "We exist because of you" line that, as beautiful as it is, has been said so many times it has almost become background noise. He says something specific, something small, something that somehow contains everything. He talks about being alone in the studio during the making of Ararang, late at night, questioning everything, wondering if what he was creating was good enough, wondering if he was good enough. And he says that in those moments, he didn't think about charts. He didn't think about streaming numbers or Billboard rankings or award shows. He thought about one image, one single image, a person, somewhere in the world, sitting alone in their room, headphones on, listening to his music in the dark, and finding something in it that made them feel less alone. That image, that one anonymous, imaginary, completely real person. That is what kept him going. That is what made him stay in the studio when every part of him wanted to walk out. That is what made him push through the take that wasn't working and try again. That is what made him choose honesty over safety in his lyrics, vulnerability over polish in his delivery. Because somewhere out there, that person was waiting, and Jimin refused to let them down. Now I want you to think about something. I want you to think about who that person is. Because here's what Jimin did not say, and what I think is the most beautiful part of all of this. He did not describe that person. He did not give them a gender, an age, a nationality, a language. He left that image completely open, because that person is different for every listener. And yet for every listener, that person is real. That person is you. That person has always been you. You in your room, your headphones, your private relationship with a song that somehow knew exactly what you were feeling before you could name it yourself. You are the reason that song exists. You, specifically, personally, individually you, are the image that Jimin held onto in the hardest moments of making Ararang. That's not a small thing. That is everything. Now let's talk about the album itself for a moment, because understanding Ararang as a concept makes Jimin's words land even heavier. Ararang is one of the oldest and most beloved folk songs in Korean history. It has been sung for centuries. It has been passed down through generations. It belongs to no single composer because it belongs to everyone who has ever needed it. And it is, at its core, a song about a journey, about leaving, about longing, about carrying something precious from where you came from into the unknown. When BTS chose that name, when they decided that this album, this comeback, this return would be called Ararang, they were making a statement about identity, about roots, about what it means to travel so far from where you started and still carry that place inside you. And Jimin, who grew up in Busan, who has always carried his hometown identity with a quiet pride, who has always been someone who transforms without losing himself, Jimin understands that statement more personally than most people could. What he said in that Spotify video is not separate from the music. It is the music. It is the thesis of the entire album expressed in real time, in his real voice, in his own words. Ararang is about the journey. Jimin just told you what that journey actually felt like from the inside. And there's one more piece of the video that I have to mention. Because it is small, and it is quiet, and it is the thing that broke me completely. Jimin talks about a day during recording when everything felt too heavy. Too much. One of those days that every creative person knows, the days when you wonder why you do this at all. And he says that one of the members came and sat next to him. Didn't say anything. Didn't try to fix anything. Just sat there. And that was enough. He doesn't say who. He doesn't need to. Because anyone who has ever been loved properly knows that the most powerful comfort is often the most quiet one. The presence that requires no explanation. The person who knows that sometimes you don't need words. You just need to not be alone. Jimin gave us that story. This tiny, specific, completely ordinary moment from a recording studio in Seoul. And in doing so, he made millions of people around the world think about the people in their own lives who have sat with them in silence. He made millions of people feel grateful for something they might have taken for granted. He turned a memory from a studio into a mirror. That is what Jimin does. That has always been what Jimin does. He doesn't just make music for you to consume. He makes music, and now, clearly videos, that make you feel understood. That make you feel like someone in the world sees the part of you that you haven't quite figured out how to show yet. Ararang drops March 20th. The Netflix live concert from Gwanghwamun Square is March 21st. The documentary BTS, The Return lands March 27th. This is not just a comeback. This is a full return, complete, intentional, and deeply human. And Jimin just gave us the first real look at what this era is going to mean. Go open Spotify, find Decoding Erarang, put your headphones on, and listen to Jimin talk to you. Not as a performer, not as an idol, but as ParkJimin, a person who has walked an extraordinary road and wants you to know that you were never a stranger to him along the way. Tell me in the comments, which part hit you the hardest? Because I already know it's going to be different for every single one of you. And that difference, that personal connection, is exactly the point. That is exactly what Jimin intended. And that is exactly why, 12 years into one of the greatest careers in music history, ParkJimin still has the ability to make the whole world stop and feel something real. 7 days. Erarang is almost here. And honestly, after that video, I don't think any of us are ready. And you know what? I want to take a moment to talk about something that I think gets overlooked in conversations about Jimin. Because we talk a lot about his voice. We talk about his dancing. We talk about his visuals, his stage presence, his ability to command an audience of 60,000 people like every single one of them is the only person in the room. And all of that is real, and all of that is valid, and all of that deserves every conversation it gets. But what that Spotify video reminded me, what it forced me to sit with in a way I wasn't fully prepared for, is that Jimin's greatest gift has never been any of those things. His greatest gift is his willingness to feel things fully and then translate those feelings into something that other people can hold on to. That is a rare ability. That is actually an incredibly rare human ability that most people spend their entire lives trying to develop and never quite get there. And Jimin does it naturally, almost effortlessly, as if he was built specifically to bridge the gap between what we feel and what we can't say. Think about the songs that have meant the most to you across BTS's discography. Think about the moments in concerts or in videos where something cracked open inside your chest and you weren't entirely sure why. I would bet that Jimin had something to do with a significant number of those moments. Not because he's the only talented one, because he absolutely is not. This group is stacked with generational talent across the board, but because there is something in the specific frequency of how Jimin expresses himself that seems to bypass your defenses entirely. He doesn't knock on the door. He just somehow already knows the door code. And Erarang, based on everything we've seen and heard so far, is shaping up to be the most fully realized version of that ability we have ever witnessed. Because for the first time, all 7 of them are coming back not as a group that is still proving itself, not as a group that is still climbing, but as 7 men who have already been everywhere and done everything and chosen. Consciously, deliberately, with full knowledge of what they were choosing, to come back together. There is a maturity to this era that is different from anything BTS has done before. And Jimin's video captures that maturity perfectly. He is not the eager trainee from Busan anymore. He is not the young performer desperate to prove his worth. He is a man who knows exactly who he is, who has paid a very real price to get that knowledge, and who is now choosing to share it openly with the people who have been there the whole time. That is what you're going to hear in Erarang. That is what you're going to see on that stage at Gwanghwamun Square on March 21st. And that is what Jimin was preparing you for with every word he said in that Spotify video. He wasn't just talking about the album. He was introducing you to who he is right now, in this chapter, at this exact point in his life. And he trusted you enough to do it honestly. So when Erarang drops in 7 days, when you finally press play on that album for the first time, I want you to remember this video. I want you to remember what Jimin said about the person in the room with headphones on. I want you to remember that you are that person. You have always been that person. And the music you are about to hear was made, at least in part, for you. And I think that's what makes this particular moment in BTS history so significant. Because we have seen comebacks before. We have lived through every era, every concept, every reinvention. We were there for the chaos, and the joy, and the tears, and the waiting. We know what a BTS comeback feels like in our bones. But this one feels different in a way that is genuinely hard to articulate, and Jimin's video is the clearest explanation I have found for why. Because what he described in that Spotify message is not the energy of a group returning out of obligation, or momentum, or industry pressure. What he described is the energy of people who left, who lived, who grew in ways that required distance and silence and time, and who came back because they genuinely had something new to say. Something they could not have said before. Something that needed all of those years and all of that experience and all of that pain and all of that joy to become fully formed. Arirang is not BTS picking up where they left off. Arirang is BTS arriving somewhere completely new and bringing everything they have ever been with them to get there. And Jimin, standing in front of that Spotify camera with no performance, no choreography, no stage lighting, just his voice and his honesty in his eyes, showed us exactly what that arrival looks like up close. It looks like peace. Hard-earned, fully deserved, quietly radiant peace. The kind that only comes after you have been through the fire and chosen to walk out the other side, still holding on to what matters. Still holding on to the music. Still holding on to each other. Still holding on to us. 6 days now. The countdown is real. And I don't know about you, but after everything Jimin said, I have never been more ready.